When was the last time that the Washington Commanders were relevant? It's been quite a while since the early RG3 days, and I'm here in the 10-minute NFL recap series to talk all things Washington on the first of two shows today. So let's get right into it. A short period of time. When last we saw Washington, they tanked. This was the definition of tanking. They pretty much had a fire sale with Josh Sweat and Chase Young, trading them at the trading deadline. Washington finished 0-8. Listen to these numbers. Oh my goodness, they were outscored by a 2-to-1 ratio, allowing over 30 points per game. They had 4 defensive sacks, 4 in their last 6 games without Sweat and without Chase Brown. They were dead last with a bullet with 39 pass TDs allowed. They went 0-6 in the division. They won 1 home game all season. So, how do they get better? Why are we talking about them being relevant now? Well, the first thing they had to do is completely change the culture. Of course, that started with the owner, not the past owner actually being the past owner. So, they're under new ownership and they started to change the culture. If you look at who they selected and how they went about going, changing the roster and free agency, it wasn't to get the absolute star player. It was to get team contributors, people who would buy into the process. And basically, what I think they did with that is they got a lot of, I think they ended up with somewhere between 18 and 20 new players, purged the roster somewhat, maybe similar to what Houston did a year ago and Jacksonville 2 or 3 years ago, and a number of other teams have tried. They're really trying to go ahead and get some players that complement each other. And this team has a lot of needs, as I'll be going into very shortly with my needs as far as before the draft. In free agency, nothing especially stood out in terms of a player they had to have or a player they lost that was really important that they lost. It was really about replenishing the coaching staff too. Dan Quinn brings a lot of experience to the coaching ledger here. 3 years in a winning culture in Dallas, at reestablishing that Dallas defense. I think that did him a world of good, absolutely deserving of this second chance at a head coaching job. Cliff Kingsbury is a curious hire. I'm not sure how that will work. We'll talk about that a little bit more. He does leave his quarterbacks a little bit more uncovered. There are sacks that could be an issue with this offensive line and with a rookie quarterback. But he is good at scheming plays. He obviously, with Texas Tech and then with Arizona, was sort of an offensive guru wizard type for that matter. Joe Witt is a new defensive coordinator. He comes along. He was with Dan Quinn in Dallas. They've also upgraded in their special team coordinator. So I think the staff is a little bit of an upgrade and is going to be a little bit more innovative than the previous staff. Let's go right to the needs that I have. And there are many more needs than this, to be honest. But my top needs are quarterback, of course, 2 to 3 offensive linemen. If you look at how many sacks they allowed last year, I believe it was 65. A lot of that was on Sam Howell and a rookie quarterback and the scheme that Ron Rivera used. However, it's more than that. I mean, when you look at it, they're going to be protecting for another rookie quarterback. They need offensive line upgrades. They still need edge rushers, of course, after giving away their top 2. And I think they need cornerback. Well, everybody should think they need cornerback when you allow 39 pass touchdowns. It's not just the pass rush, because they did have Sweat and Chase Brown for half the year. It was that they had substandard cornerback play. Jaden Daniels is an excellent fit with this team. He has escapability. He's this kind of now 2020s quarterback where he's athletic. He was extremely accurate. They put up a lot of points at LSU. So I think Daniels fits. They have to get him protection. They got Brandon Coleman on the offensive line for him. He was 7th rated offensive guard, a 4th round grade for me. He went in the third round. So average in terms of what I thought they could accomplish in terms of the offensive guard board. There were a couple of better offensive linemen available. My biggest beef is that they should have doubled or tripled up on offensive line, and they didn't. So that's a sore spot with me. I like Newton. This was a defensive tackle draft that was not deep. After Murphy, who went 16th to Seattle, then came Newton, who went at pick 36. I had him as a late first round grade, so there's value there. And then there's a drop at defensive tackle. So there weren't that many defensive tackles available. You won't see it necessarily as a need, but this is kind of a best player available pick, in my opinion. From Illinois. He was coached well at Illinois. So I think, again, this is a culture pick. And you're going to hear a lot of that because Michigan's cornerback, while not the highest rated cornerback, I had him in the range of 45 to 55. He went 50th. He was my 6th rated cornerback. So this fits in terms of where I thought his draft slot was. Could they have gone up and got cornerback earlier before defensive tackle? Sure. But this player is another culture fit. You go down to Luke McCaffrey. Originally wasn't sure about this pick. I like this pick too. He's willing to go over the middle. He's got the same work ethic that his older brother has over in San Francisco. Obviously not the same talent, or he wouldn't have gone at pick 100. But still, this is a pick that, when coupled with the wide receivers that Washington already has on the roster, this elevates the wide receiver core. High work ethic again. This is what the draft was all about. Ben Sinnott at tight end replaces Logan Thomas, who left via free agency. Another change the culture pick. So I like what they did. I would have doubled up and tripled up maybe at offensive line. I would have gone after the edge rusher. I would have gone after another cornerback. But overall, I think Washington's roster improved, not only in free agency, but in the draft. They had a lot of ground to make up, but I definitely think the roster improved. When we look at the schedule notes, this is not a bad schedule by any means. They're uncommon opponents, the opponents that Dallas, Philadelphia, and the New York Giants will not play are Chicago. Chicago has playoff hopes, but as I'll talk about tomorrow, there's still some concerns about their staff and their roster. Tennessee in rebuilding mode, and Atlanta. Atlanta's not going to be able to rush Daniels to the effectiveness that they should, because Atlanta doesn't really buy into adding to the pass rush. They do have Kirk Cousins, but none of these three teams made the playoffs last year. Washington didn't make the playoffs last year. So you're looking at a possibility that Washington will be highly competitive against these three uncommon opponents. So their task at hand is to win more in their own division, find ways to beat Dallas and the New York Giants and Philadelphia, and start winning at home. One home win doesn't cut it. Their season win total, roughly 6.5 across the board. Their divisional odds at FanDuel plus 1,000. I think, as we'll see in my final takeaways, wide range of outcomes, I think, for this particular team. So I don't think 1,000 is something I would go for with Philly's roster improved and Dallas with culture of winning. In the past, Dallas was an 8-8 team a lot, but they've upgraded now. They have better quarterback play with Dak Prescott. So, but I think the 6.5 is interesting. The one thing that stops me from really going over at the present time with Washington, I would advocate a different approach, to be honest. The one thing that stops me is that even though they have one trip only out west, it's a brutal first games 3 through 6, in my opinion. They got at Baltimore. They've got cross-country trip to Arizona on a short week after playing at Cincinnati and Joe Burrow. Very hard going from Cincinnati to Arizona, short week, new staff, and then Cleveland in the middle. There's a chance that this team starts out no better than 2-4, and then you're behind the 8 ball on that. Instead, if you see progress during the season, you might consider an season win play, or just after their bye week, which again, you know how I feel about new coaches having late buys. This bye is December 6th. This bye is way too late to make real adjustments. Even though Dan Quinn is a proven head coach, they've got a lot of work to do in terms of assessing this new roster. Dan Quinn hasn't worked with all these new faces and putting them all in gear. And, how is all of this going to work? As we'll see in my final thoughts, can they protect quarterback Daniels? Basically, he's the right choice, but the offensive line needs time to gel. We've seen that with a lot of offensive lines. The key is winning early, but that's not going to be easy. If they do win early, and if they do beat the New York Giants week 2, which is an absolute critical game, and if they can beat Cleveland week 5, then we're on to something. I think the pacing gets a little bit better. And after the bye, like I said, when you come to December, they could be an ignored team that's finding their stride late. You might see this team win 6 or 7 games, but it might be one of those situations where they go 4-2 down the stretch. Wide range of outcomes for Washington. Bottom line to me is that this roster is improved. This is a good coaching staff. I still need to see more out of if Cliff Kingsbury is the right hire. Hopefully Daniel stays healthy behind this offensive line. I think they're on to something. I think this team could be building for 2025 and beyond. A little cautious early, but finally, I think Washington is a team that we could be talking about in November, December, and January. Thanks for listening to my 10-minute recap here of Washington. I'm staying in this division with special guest Connor Allen at the top of the hour. So we're only about 45 minutes away from Connor Allen's view of the New York Football Giants. Can they make noise in a competitive NFC East? All my videos are available on my YouTube page. Again, the New York Giants coming up next with Connor Allen. Thanks for watching this video, and hope you come back and tune in for the rest of the videos, including the one with the New York Giants at the top of the hour.